Hey everyone! Welcome back to Behind the HR Cubicle. I'm Hina Rai. First, thank you for hanging in there while this episode took a little longer to reach you. Sometimes life gives you a real-time case study in motivation, and here we are. So, let's get into it. Last time, we explored content theories. What drives people from within? Safety, recognition, growth. But today, we're diving into something more dynamic. Process theories of motivation. These theories don't just ask what people need. They explore how people make decisions about effort, persistence, and engagement. And that shift, from need to process, is where things get really interesting. Let me start with a simple scenario. Imagine two dedicated employees, Maya and Neil. Both are equally committed, equally competent, but Neil gets promoted, while Maya doesn't. At first, Maya may rationalize it. Maybe she thinks her turn will come next. She continues to work hard, holding on to hope. But over time, if the recognition doesn't arrive, she begins to question the system. Doubt creeps in, followed by frustration, and eventually disengagement. This is the heart of equity theory, the belief that motivation is rooted not only in outcomes, but in how fairly those outcomes compare to others. People instinctively measure their input against their reward, and then compare that balance to their peers. When things feel unfair, motivation quietly begins to erode. What's particularly tricky in today's remote and hybrid workplaces is that these perceptions of inequity often go unnoticed, festering quietly, far from the office and out of managerial sight. And this leads us to another lens expectancy theory, introduced by Victor Vroom. While equity theory is driven by fairness, expectancy theory is rooted in belief. Specifically, the belief that our efforts will lead to success, that success will bring reward, and that the reward is actually worth it. If any link in that mental chain breaks, motivation suffers. We've seen this theory come alive in organizations like Infosys. The company recognized a disconnect. Employees were investing time in learning programs, but didn't see a clear outcome. So, Infosys reimagined its learning approach. Certifications weren't just formalities. They became pathways to promotions and international opportunities. Suddenly, the equation changed. Effort led to growth. Growth led to visible rewards. And because the rewards mattered, people were energized to act. When belief in the system is restored, motivation returns with it. But even belief has its limits. The deepest motivation often comes not from fairness or reward, but from something far more human. That's where self-determination theory comes in, developed by Edward Dacey and Richard Ryan. This theory shifts the spotlight to what makes people feel truly alive at work: the freedom to make choices, the chance to grow their skills, and a sense of belonging. One of the most vivid illustrations of this theory in action comes from Spotify. Years ago, the company was weighed down by bureaucracy and slow decision-making. Morale was slipping, so they made a bold move. They introduced a new structure, the now famous Spotify model, built on squads, tribes, and guilds. These weren't just fancy names. Each small, cross-functional team was empowered to own a product or feature from end to end. It was like giving each group a startup of their own, full accountability, full freedom. And the results were dramatic. Teams began holding retrospectives, embracing mistakes, even building fail walls to celebrate what they learned from missteps. Creativity and speed flourished. By 2018, Spotify had scaled to more than 30 agile teams across time zones without losing direction. Their now iconic Discover Weekly feature emerged from this culture, refined through live A/B testing and powered by user data. 1 year later, premium subscriptions had grown by nearly 30%. But Spotify didn't stop with structure. They went deeper, into culture. Employees were encouraged to take ownership of their growth. Experimentation wasn't just permitted, it was expected. Feedback was gathered not only through data, but through genuine dialogue. Decisions were informed by numbers, yes, but also by empathy and human context. In this environment, people didn't just show up, they showed up with purpose. The payoff was real. Decision-making cycles sped up, innovation surged, turnover dropped, and with the launch of their flexible work-from-anywhere policy, attrition dropped by 15%. Even more inspiring, Black and Hispanic leadership representation in the US rose from 12.7% to 18%. When autonomy is paired with trust, both retention and belonging grow stronger. That said, self-determination theory isn't without risks. Too much freedom, without clear goals, can turn creativity into chaos. But Spotify countered that by creating strong but flexible boundaries through mission clarity, transparent metrics, team retrospectives, and shared leadership roles that help teams stay grounded while still moving fast. And that brings us to one final layer of the process puzzle, reinforcement theory, rooted in the work of B.F. Skinner. It's based on a simple but powerful idea. Behavior that gets rewarded is more likely to be repeated. In this view, motivation is shaped by what follows our actions. If good performance is consistently met with praise, recognition, or reward, people are encouraged to keep going. But if it's met with silence, or worse, punishment, the drive to repeat that behavior fades. Many managers use this intuitively. They recognize achievements in team meetings, give bonuses for hitting targets, or send a thank you message after a late-night push. These responses condition employees to link behavior with outcomes. But there's a fine line. When reinforcement becomes too mechanical, do X, get Y, people may begin to work just to earn the next reward, not because they feel connected to the task. It can breed compliance instead of creativity. That's why, in modern workplaces, reinforcement theory must be part of a broader ecosystem. The best companies balance reinforcement with meaning, fairness, autonomy, and psychological safety. One brilliant example comes from Google's Project Aristotle, where researchers discovered that the most effective teams weren't necessarily the smartest. They were the safest. Team members felt valued, heard, and unafraid to take risks. And in that environment, motivation wasn't forced, it was organic. And that's where all these theories meet. Motivation isn't about tricking people into working harder. It's about building systems that help them see their value, believe in the journey, and feel like they belong. Most people won't say, "I've lost my motivation." They'll say things like, "I'm doing everything, but I don't know why anymore." And that, right there, is the signal. A quiet but powerful clue that motivation isn't gone. It's waiting to be reawakened. So, what about your organization? Which theory feels most present? Equity, expectancy, self-determination, or reinforcement? And which one needs a little Spotify-style reinvention? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you're here for more. And as always, let's keep decoding HR one cubicle at a time.